Wow, that's quite a send-off. Thank you so much. I'm just absolutely so excited and happy to be with you all today. It's just such an honor. It's awesome. I'm so happy to be here. And actually, I'm not doing anything medically with Stanford at all right now. I'm doing ministry with the school. I'm actually doing a prayer and healing ministry with Stanford right now. So I do nothing medical with them anymore. It's kind of typical of what has been happening with my career. So I'm actually part of the main campus now rather than the medical center, and it's been very, very wonderful. So there's a few things that I'd like to share with you all today during the morning session. I would like to give you a little bit more information and share with you about how I came to be both a medical doctor and an ordained minister, how God created this. And then I really want to showcase the Lord because He's the true star. I brought a bunch of healing miracles that He has done, and I have wanted to really showcase Him because it's wonderful what He's been doing here in the Bay Area. It's very inspiring. It's very amazing. So I started my career as a medical doctor and had a large practice in the Mid-Peninsula in the Palo Alto area and loved what I was doing. It was awesome. It was great to work with patients and to also have a kingdom-based practice. I was one of the few doctors in the area that would hug patients and that had a very deep personal relationship with the people that I saw. And it was, a wonderful thing to combine the technical part of the field with the love of God, the heart that God really wants us to have. And the biggest frustration with what I was doing, though, was that we don't cure people. And we don't ever use the word healing in my field. We manage symptoms, we manage illness, but we really never cure people. In fact, it's not a word that we favor. So I had exceptionally great results with my patients, but it wasn't supernatural miracles of the Lord. I didn't see the kind of things that I saw later on. And the Lord spoke to me about 6.5 to 7 years ago. And at that time, He guided me and said He wanted me to become ordained and to go into ministry. And being ever obedient, I went ahead and did that. And at that time, my life completely and totally changed. I went from strictly doing a medical practice, doing a lot of teaching at many hospitals, many medical centers, and started to have doors to many of the hospitals in our area open for me to go ahead and minister. And the requests were coming from many different places. They were coming from other ministries. Ministers who knew about my work would ask me to go into the hospitals and pray for people in their church family. Families would contact me. And then when I was in the hospitals, it would kind of go viral. People that I would pray for, their next door neighbor would want prayer. Sometimes nurses would come up to me and ask me to pray for other patients. If the patient didn't have a family member or they just, people would hear about it. People would come up to me in elevators if I was speaking with families. So it kind of went viral. And I was in hospitals all over the area. I was in Stanford Hospital and Lucille Packard Children's, the Veterans Hospitals in Palo Alto and San Francisco, Kaiser Hospitals, private hospitals. I was all over the place. And it was a very unusual ministry because the Lord spoke to me as I was doing this and showed me that even if I was in the hospitals, that I still had to go in, first of all, with love. I wasn't supposed to just go pray for people. I was supposed to create relationship. And a lot of the time, because I was going in through ministers and families, the people weren't even aware that I was a doctor. They were ill. So they would, relate to me more from the standpoint of me being a a minister, someone who was there to care for them. And it was an incredible experience because, as Dr. Ed Silvoso mentioned, I saw literally an army of quadriplegics raise up and walk. It was an amazing experience. I'm sure you're all aware of Christopher Reeves. Everybody know who Christopher Reeves is. He was the old Superman who was a quadriplegic. And he is typical of what you see in the field. He was our most famous quadriplegic, and he never walked. And he had millions of dollars given to him, given to his medical care. And for 10 years after his accident, he had minimal recovery. There is very little you can do for people with this condition. Many of them are on portable ventilators, they're on electrical wheelchairs, and because they're paralyzed from the neck and shoulders down with only minimal use of their arms, there's very little that they can do except, be in bed and be in their wheelchair, but they're not active. And what was amazing was that I just saw person after person rise up and be healed by the Lord. And in the hospitals in our area, I was seeing the crippled walk and the blind see and the deaf hear. And it was amazing because often we think that you have to go somewhere else. Like that is not what happens in the Bay Area. You go to Mozambique or you go to Brazil. You go to other places to see miracles. You don't think that Kaiser Hospital, you're going to see a miracle. But I was seeing thousands of miracles, and they were amazing miracles, and things that I just had never conceived of in my practice. And what I loved about the Lord during this time was that he was healing everyone. If people wanted me to pray for them, it didn't matter if they were a believer or if they were a non-believer, a Hindu, a Buddhist. He would heal everyone, and so many of them would then come to him. They would give their heart to the Lord in just gratitude and appreciation. And you didn't have to be a good person. There was one man that I prayed for who was a criminal. He was a robber. He was a bad guy. And he became paralyzed because he had fallen off a building when he was committing a robbery. And he told me that he knew he was in real trouble because in the ambulance, he couldn't feel his body. And he ended up in the hospital. And the amazing thing about it was that the Lord healed him so quickly that after 1 or 2 prayers, he was doing push-ups. And I couldn't do anything like he could do. He could do way more push-ups than I could do. And not only did the Lord heal him so he could do push-ups and squats and all kinds of things while he was still hospitalized, but he healed his heart. He brought him to him, and he had been estranged from his family since he was 11 years old. And the Lord healed the family relationship, and he spoke to his father for the first time in 20 years. It was really touching. There was another man that I prayed over who had been in a burning house, and he had 3rd-degree burns. And they were all over his body. And he was in the ICU, and usually it takes months. Skin grafts and smoke inhalation damage. It's a terrible problem to have this kind of damage. And it was amazing because I prayed over him and left. And when I came back, the Lord had completely healed all of his upper body burns. They had fallen off his body. There was nothing there. Just smooth, perfect, beautiful skin. Like perfect. Nicer skin than anybody I've ever seen, like baby skin. And I thought, wow, God, this is incredible. So I prayed for him again, and then all the burns dropped off his lower body, and he was completely healed. And in a few days, he was home. He didn't need to be in the ICU. And so I was seeing miracle after miracle. I was seeing people who technically were dead. I remember praying for one man who was flatlined. He had no brain activity. and he had had a hemorrhagic bleed and was discovered in the bathroom of his home, collapsed, and brought into one of the hospitals, and nothing could be done for him. He was just flatlined, unconscious, no sign of life. And I was asked to pray for him because he's from another country, and a close friend of mine knew him well and was made next of kin. So I was called in from my friend. And I went to pray for him, and he was just completely out. He had tape over his mouth. He was taped everywhere, and they were getting ready to pull the plug on him. He had about, hours, and then he was going to be, taken and let off life support. So I prayed for him and didn't see anything right away and left. And right away I got a call very soon after from my friend, really excited, telling me his eyes had popped open. So I ran back to the hospital, and here's a man, they're ready to, he's ready to die, and his eyes are open, and he sees me, and he gives me a little wave, and it was really precious. And he healed so fast from then on. But the most amazing thing was I was standing there, and his doctor came in, his neurosurgeon, and totally ignored me. It was like I wasn't even there. And he looked at this man with genuine surprise and spoke to him and said, "Sir, you've had a complete and total miracle." And this was not a word that this doctor would normally use. We don't use the word miracle. And he said, "This is incredible." And he said, "Whatever has happened, you've had a miracle." And the amazing thing was he healed completely. It was like he had never even had a hemorrhage in his brain. There was no damage, no speech problems, no weakness, nothing. And I remember visiting with him and speaking with him soon after he was in healing mode. And he was crying. The tears are coming down his face because he was so touched by what the Lord did for him. And I asked him if he knew I had prayed for him when he was out. No brain activity, and he said yes. He was aware that he was being prayed for. And I've heard this over and over again with people who have been in coma, or even people that I've prayed for who've come back literally from death. And they've all known they were being prayed for. So it was an amazing, amazing thing that the Lord does. So this was my experience in the hospital, just seeing limbs growing out. I remember I prayed for one man who was in his middle 80s, who was not in the hospital because he needed a limb growing out. He had a little shriveled up half arm, and it was a condition he had been born with. It was little and shriveled and paralyzed. He couldn't move it. And I went into the ICU and saw this thing, and but that was not why he was there. He was in the ICU because he was very seriously ill. So I prayed over him, and not only did the Lord heal him, but he grew an arm out for him. And it was a completely matching arm. But the thing I loved about this arm was that it was a big, huge 20-year-old arm. It did not match the rest of his body. It was a big, muscular, tan, gorgeous-looking arm. The Lord either has the best sense of humor, or he really wanted this man to be doing something with this big arm. It's really funny in pictures. It does not look like the rest of him at all. And when people have asked me to look at the pictures, they'll always say, "Show me the guy with the arm." And it was awesome because when I would go and visit him, he would always show this arm off. The minute he would see me, it was no longer paralyzed. He'd take this big muscular arm and flip it around and show me all the things he could do with this. So obviously God was going to have him chop wood or chop a tree down or something with this thing. It was amazing. So I saw a lot of amazing things. I'll be showing you some pictures in just a few minutes. So A couple of the things that the Lord impressed on me during this time, because I had no idea that there was anything more than him just guiding me into the hospital and working with seriously ill people and having this personal experience with him. But he did show me again that love was number one, and that I never did get turned down with prayers. It didn't matter what the family was like, what the person was like, if they were believers or non-believers. If I created relationship and they knew I really cared about them, everybody wanted prayer, and then God's work would start from there in terms of what he would do with these miracle healings. But he also led me to start to pray in a different way, which was really, really awesome. Because of my background being both a medical doctor and a minister, he wanted to make use of both of these gifts. So we have such a division between the doctors and the ministers. In my field of medicine, unless you're a patient of one of the few of us that pray for the sick, and there's very few of us that do that in this country, we know all there is to know technically about illness, but we don't pray for supernatural miracles of the Lord. And then we have the most loving, brilliant people, totally devoted to the Lord in ministry, who don't really know much about the human body. Like they don't know where the spleen is or where what the liver does or whatever. So we have all of these gifted people, brilliant people in all these different areas, not necessarily with the same knowledge base and the same gifts. So the Lord wanted me to use both when I was doing these prayers. And so I would pray medically for people as if literally the Lord, who's our creator, was speaking through every single chemical pathway in their body that needed attention. And that was a really special thing to do. I could literally pray as a doctor into anything and everything that needed to be fixed in great detail, just the way the Lord's created us, because he's a Lord of detail. We are so perfectly made, and it was awesome to be able to do that. And at the same time, I was able to pray as a minister, to pray with inner healing, to pray into a person's soul and into their heart. And it was great because people who were kind of falling through the cracks and just not getting better with anything would have a blessing from this, because I was covering so many different bases in these prayers I was doing. So that was a real blessing. The Lord guided me and showed me to do that. He showed me to pray for the whole person, top to bottom, not leave any room for the enemy to get in. And it was a really awesome thing to be doing. And I found, even in more recent times, doing more and more prayer in different venues, whether it's been in hospitals or outpatient settings, homes, wherever. I've continued to pray that way, and it's been really positive. Like, one of the things I love to pray for is cancer. I love to see God heal cancer, because I pray against, I just go after it the way a doctor would go after it. I pray against all the different genetic mutations. I pray for the cellular metabolism to be normalized. I just get in there and I pray at every level I can. And I've seen amazing things. I remember one woman whose daughter, who's a pharmacist, brought her to one of the conferences that we were doing and asked me to pray for her mom, who had really advanced lung cancer. And so I prayed for her medically, and she went back to her doctors, was reevaluated soon thereafter, and there was no trace of cancer. Another woman that I'm doing some personal prayer ministry for right now, who is referred to me, has very advanced stage 4 cancer. It's bad news cancer. She has, when she was opened up, they thought they were just cleaning up some scar tissue, and there was cancer all over her body. So she needed some real help. This is current. This was just a recent referral to me. And so she had a couple of lab tests done prior to my seeing her. As all of you know, chemotherapy is really hard on your blood counts. People, when they're under chemo, their blood counts collapse. Their white counts go down, their red counts go down. And her white count was terrible. Normal white counts around 4,000 to 10,000. Hers was 600. She had no immunity. It was terrible. She also, because of the cancer, had a condition called ascites. Have any of you heard of that term? Some of you? What it is the cancer cells. We also see it, by the way, with terminal liver disease, like cirrhosis of the liver, where the liver isn't functioning anymore. But what you have is a lot of fluid accumulating in the abdomen. And with cancer, that fluid is full of cancer cells. So it's nasty stuff. And she had been accumulating fluid, and before I met her, they tapped her. What they do is they put a big needle into your abdomen, and so they pull out the fluid, and it was full of malignant cells. It was full of cancer. So I prayed for her not too long ago, and within less than a day, she had her blood drawn again, and her blood count had jumped right back to normal, which was amazing with chemo. I love it when God changes blood tests and lab tests. I've seen him change MRIs, I've seen him change x-rays, and I loved what he did. But even cooler was within 48 hours, she had reaccumulated this ascites fluid, but when they retapped her, there was hardly any fluid and not a single cancer cell. It was all normal. So that's right now, that's just current. So I love the Lord as a healer. He's amazing. So just to bring you up to current times, and then we're going to go ahead and show slides. As I say, I thought that all the Lord wanted to do was just to have me pray over and see him heal thousands of patients, many thousands. But a few years ago, he started to expand what I was doing. And I didn't realize he was actually leading me to found a medical ministry. But he guided me to do a social media page. And so I started a Facebook page, and it was going to be a complement to what I was doing with the healing. It was going to be a healthy living page. Lots of health tips, healthy recipes, exercise tips. And the page did not flourish. I begged 20 of my friends to like the page, and I had 10 people like it. And 10 of my friends would not like the page. So you can see how the page started out. It wasn't very successful. It was a complete failure. And it was really depressing. I rarely get depressed. I'm usually in a really good mood, but the page was really depressing because I had promised God I would do this page. And I didn't want to do it. It was like, oh no, I have to post on the page today. And we weren't growing. After a couple months, maybe I had doubled to 20 people. And then the Lord sort of took me in hand and said, no, this page is not about popsicle recipes and chocolate chip cookies. He said, it's about me. And I thought, oh my goodness, where have I been? Of course this page is about him. So I started to change the page, and I started to post things about the Lord and inspire people. And just like in the hospital, his beautiful, loving presence showed up on the page, and he took over the page. And all of a sudden, we were getting hundreds of people an hour coming on this page. So imagine a page with 20 people having 500,000 people showing up for one post. That's the kind of thing that was happening with the page, because we serve a God of miracles. And this page needed a miracle, and he created it. So we were having thousands and thousands of shares for everything that got posted. We currently have 1,200,000 followers, and we've had millions of people on the page, at times as many as 5 million people a week. And this is for a non-existent ministry, because there was no ministry at the time. It was just me and a few people, and working, praying for people, being in the hospitals. But the Lord was showing me that he had things that he wanted. So we were getting 1.5 million prayer requests a year. So at that time, things started to change. I literally had to start formulating more of a ministry, putting a prayer team together because we had so many people wanting prayer. And then the Lord started to just move into what his real purpose was, which is just in our area, we are now at the beginning of what's going to be the most incredible revival of our area, the whole Bay Area. And what I love about it is it's going to be different than the other revivals. It's not like Azusa Street, which is one of my favorite revivals, or Toronto Airport, where you had a special place where people went. This revival is going to be all over the Bay Area. And the amazing thing that the Lord shared with me is that San Jose, like a church like Jubilee, the focus even in the Bay Area is going to be the South Bay. That's what he's been showing me, that this is an anointed area. And your church is an anointed church for this. This is going to be a church where a lot of revival is going to be happening more and more and more, even with all the miracles that you all see. I know your whole history is as a miracle, supernatural, anointed church. But more and more is going to be coming in through the Lord. And it's going to be spreading out through the whole country. But our godless area, our under-churched area that Dr. Ed was talking about is going to be a real center of this. It's going to be very special. So what the Lord has had our ministry, which is a medical ministry, do is this year to start a training program. And we've just started a pilot teaching program. And we've had 14 medical doctors teaching medicine to people who are prayer intercessors and ministers, so we can start combining the two. And then teaching supernatural prayer healing ministry. We're the first ministry in the whole country to do this. There is no other ministry. And we're really blessed to be here. So it's really special. So we have this, and then I did want to share one other resource with you, and then I want to go on to the pictures because they are really special. And I just wanted to let you all know that we are doing conferences and clinics, and we're doing quite a bit with Harvest Evangelism. They're really, we're really partnering with them on a lot. And then I've also been doing audio downloads for people who have strongholds and are frustrated and are having a hard time healing. So I'm praying medically and spiritually for conditions like neuropathy or different cancers, multiple sclerosis, different kinds of really difficult to heal issues where you really want to have prayer over and over again, like medical spiritual prayer that you can listen to for hours. So I've been doing these audio downloads, and I do have some flyers for any of you that are interested in what we're doing, a sign-up sheet if you'd like to know more about our activities. So with that, I want to turn to the real star, and that is the Lord. And let's see, I'd like to put on the first slide, and let's see, let's go ahead. So this is a little boy who is 1.5 years old. And the interesting story about him is he was born neurologically impaired. He is a little child who is brain impaired. And his mom and dad are both computer software engineers in Silicon Valley. And they originate from India, and the family is Hindu. The mom is now a baby Christian of a few months standing, but the family is of Hindu background. And the little boy was born brain impaired, and it was obvious to the mom and the dad that there was something really wrong with him. About 6 or 8 months of age, he just wasn't responding. He didn't go through normal developmental stages that children go through, crawling and walking. He was like a little blob, a little unresponsive blob. He did not know he had a mom and dad, and there was no exploring of the outside world. So the parents brought him back for a short time to India, and the mom told me that they went to the Hindu priests and asked the Hindu priests if they would heal him. And nothing happened. Lots of resources, rituals, fire rituals, all kinds of things, the mom told me. Nothing. And she was angry and frustrated. And she told me she was so upset that she literally, when they left, cursed the priests. And she cursed herself for her, what she called her misfortune, and she cursed the little child. It was really a bad thing. But she came back to this country, and the Lord started to work on her heart. And she began to meet people who were believers. And just a few months before I met them, and she was really touched by the Lord. And she started to read the Bible and understood that the greatest healer that the world has ever seen was Jesus Christ. And so she decided she was going to hunt out and find someone who could help her, who was a believer, who believed in Jesus, who would pray for her child. So she found me and contacted me. She emailed me on the Facebook page. She emailed me on our website and said, would you please pray for my child? So I met the little boy, and there he was just like this. Oh, not yet. That's him after prayer, but don't go to the next slide till I ask you to, because I really want to tell his story. So here he was, no recognition of his mom at all. His mom is stabilizing him. And I started to pray for him, and just to let you know what kind of experience it was, he was lying across a bench because he couldn't sit up. And he was screaming and he was drooling, and no muscle tone at all. If he would sit up, he would flop over. And as I prayed for him, things did start to shift. He stopped screaming, he stopped drooling, and his muscle tone shifted. And then this next picture is what happened afterwards. And it's dramatic. This is what he looked like afterwards. This is what the Lord did for this little boy. And he continued to heal. And we can now go ahead. Now we can go ahead to the other pictures. Here he is within a week. He's exploring the world. He looks completely different. Think about he looked in the before picture. And I want to share with you that the Lord loves this little boy so much that when I prayed for him the first few times, the Lord poured gold dust out on him and me and the mom. We had gold dust covering the chairs, gold dust everywhere. This is a week. And then I wanted to show you a few more pictures because they're wonderful. Here he is pushing furniture. He's sitting up. Next picture. Here he is standing, which he couldn't do before. That's his mom. And then here he is with his mom in the background looking at picture books and exploring the world. And I want you to look at the love in this little boy's face for his mother. This was a little boy that did not even know that he had a family. And look at the love. He loves his mom. There he is driving a little car. And the Lord is so good that not only did he heal the little boy, but he healed medical issues of the mom. And the parents were having a difficult time with their work. It looked like the father was going to be transferred out of the Bay Area. They had a very poor contract. And even I prayed over that, and the Lord even healed that. And they're in the Bay Area. The father got a raise, and they can afford all the things they need. So this is the kind of wonderful Lord that we serve, generous in everything. So I want to go on to the next picture. And this, you are now looking inside of an ICU. And if you look carefully, it's a very unusual picture. How many of you have been in ICUs? Okay, so it's first of all, what you're seeing is a man with a big smile on his face. You will not see people in the ICU with big smiles. I also want to let you know this man is a quadriplegic. So he's waving at the camera. This is a man who he broke every bone in his neck. He's worse than Christopher Reeves. And he is in the ICU waving at the camera and lifting his leg, which is the next. We can go to that picture. This is the first time he was lifting his leg. And now we can go back to the picture of him smiling, because I want to speak a little bit to his situation. So this is a wonderful healing. This is a man who is a non-believer and really had never come to the Lord, and he had a very difficult life. He was a man whose a lot of things weren't working. He had a terrible marriage. He and his wife were fighting all the time. This is what he told me and his wife told me. They didn't get along at all. And his accident happened because they had a huge fight. They had the fight of all fights one night. And he said he ran out of the house. He didn't even look behind him, screaming at his wife. He jumped into their truck, and he went 90 miles an hour just around curves, and he flipped his truck over an embankment, and the truck flipped over the mountainside, was completely totaled. And praise the Lord, he was thrown out of the truck onto a pile of rocks. But completely destroyed, like every vertebrae in his neck was broken. So this was almost at midnight, he said. And he was airlifted by helicopter, air ambulance, to the local hospital, and they operated on him as they do with virtually every quadriplegic that I prayed for. And so he had rods and all kinds of hardware in his neck. So I started to pray for him, and right away he started healing. This is just a few days after he's in the ICU. He's already lifting his leg, waving at the camera, big smile on his face. He told me a really funny story, which is he said his doctors got really freaked out and said, "You're healing too fast." I thought that was really funny, because that's how the Lord does things. He doesn't heal slowly when he heals. He just does it. So this man was moved out of the ICU and he was rehabbed, and he left the hospital walking. He only had a brace on his knee. And he said, "I'm completely changed." He said, "I'll never be the same." He said, "I'm going to testify the rest of my life for the Lord." He and his wife were completely reunited. She didn't know for 3 days he had almost died. It was 3 days before anybody notified her, and then she was in the hospital all the time, but they reunited. It was really beautiful. So let's go ahead to the next one. So this is a happy story, and just to give you a few clues, so you're going to see a woman holding a dish of food. So this is a party, and this was actually a prayer intercessors party. It happens to be for Harvest Evangelism, for Dr. Ed Silvoso's ministry, and Ted Haas was there, who's a good friend, who's one of the senior leaders, and this was a woman who had come to the event. And so we were all fellowshipping. You can see she has a plate of food in her hand and having a great time. And all of a sudden, everybody's talking and eating yummy food. And all of a sudden, there was this huge silence. And I turn around, and this woman is face down on the floor. She had tripped on a step, and she's not saying anything. So I ran over to her and started. Luckily, she was alive and she could talk, so happily in the Lord. So I asked where she was hurting, and she said her knee. So I laid hands on her, started to pray over that, and that was easy. The Lord healed that right away. She was fine. That was the easy part. So then I asked her if she was hurting anywhere else. And then what the Lord really wanted prayer for came out. So it turned out that this woman was disabled. She had been bedridden for a year. She uses a walker almost all the time. I didn't know her at all, so I didn't know anything about her history. And she has an incurable autoimmune disease called ankylosing spondylitis. It's a mouthful. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of this. So, any of you ever heard of ankylosing spondylitis? Few people, maybe some medical people here have heard of it, doctors or nurses here. So anyway, it's a crippling disease. It's extremely painful. It's autoimmune, where you attack your own spine. The vertebrae of your spine fuse. They become inflamed. And you can't even move. And the other thing this woman told me is she said, I hate myself. So I can see why she went autoimmune, because not only was she crippled from the disease, but she said, I don't like myself. She said, I actually hate myself. So I prayed over her right at this party with, or delicious, ham and prosciutto and cheese and things. And she got healed. And so she's dancing and singing and showing off. She was actually dancing at the get-together. And she's actually come to a few of our gatherings, and she shows off and she dances, in front of people. And she now loves herself. So the Lord healed her heart, and He healed her body, and He healed her mind. And that's what we want to see happen with everybody. You cannot separate the body and the mind. You've got to have both healed. If I see people come for prayer and they're frowning, you cannot heal from that. You even if you feel terrible, you need to change your brain chemistry by smiling. And frowny faces keep the devil in. So you've got to do both. If you heal your mind, you are 50% healed of your physical issue. The enemy cannot get in you anywhere if he is messing with your mind. So anyway, this was awesome. You can see she was super happy. So let's go to the next slide. And this is a little girl who was at one of the events that we did in Oakland. And this little girl has cancer in one eye. She's blinded in one eye. And one eye could see and one eye was blinded. And so she received prayer at the event. I was doing a big corporate prayer, and we kind of do a sandwich and we're going to be doing that tonight. It's really effective. It's awesome. Where the person that we're praying for, the whole church family or congregation, you all are the filling. And then we have the two pieces of bread, which is, I pray over the whole congregation, the church family, and then we do individual prayer all at once. And we see amazing things. And that's what happened with this little girl. So she was completely blinded in one eye, and then her vision came back. Her blinded eye all of a sudden could see again, and we blocked the eye that could see, and she could read a little book with the blind eye. And when the mother was so grateful. She was crying and crying. And when the mom brought her back to the eye doctor, there was no trace of cancer. Completely gone. Completely gone. Wonderful. So let's go to the next one. This is an amazing story. This is Jeffrey. And Jeffrey has the worst case of cerebral palsy that I have ever seen in my medical career. I've worked with people with cerebral palsy of, all types, mild, moderate, but he was the worst. He was so neurologically impaired that he was completely wheelchair bound, in a diaper, had no capacity to do anything. He was so destroyed by the enemy. He was constantly agitated. He was never still for 10 seconds. It was a horrible thing for his body. He's throwing his arms around, his legs around, never staying still. And his mom happens to be one of the students in our class. So she brought him to an event we were doing, and I laid hands on him, and I started to pray neurologically into his brain. And it was really hard. He kept ripping my hand off. It was I just had to persevere. But he's flinging his arms, flinging his legs around. But I persevered, and I could see, and the mom and dad could see that things were starting to shift for the first time in his entire life. So we'll go through just a couple of before pictures. There's another before picture. That's, I think, the grandma. And here he is. Before we go on to another picture, you can see he's literally flinging his arms and legs. So I prayed for him, and now we're going to go to the next. Okay, after he has been completely healed, he now can stand up and walk. He is praising the Lord at an event. We can go to the next picture. He's hugging a friend. Look at this, what the Lord's done. Look at this. He's playing the piano. Look at that. Look what the Lord did. Another picture. Look at this. He's shopping. He's out of the wheelchair shopping. Is that amazing? That's dramatic. Now, the very last one, because I know I'm running out of time, let's move on to the last slide. So we're going to stay here for a second. This is a little 5-year-old girl, and this is a really touching story because I actually prayed for her and her father. They were both in a near-death car crash. The father broke his femur, which is the big long bone of the leg, biggest bone in the body, and he had broken all his pelvic bones. I prayed for him, and he started to walk again. But the little girl was a much bigger issue. She had been severely brain injured. She was in the pediatric ICU in a coma. And she was in the coma for some time, and there was real concern that she was permanently brain damaged. She broke her jaw, she broke her arm, and they had to put a tube into her brain. They had to drill a hole in her skull, a borehole, just to release pressure in the brain. So in another picture, you can see, one more picture, here she is in the ICU, and you can see she's in a coma. They're giving her oxygen. And so the grandmother asked me to, and the rest of the family, the mom asked me to pray. And the really touching thing was that I prayed for the little girl, and she immediately came out of coma. And we can go to the next picture. Here, isn't that awesome? Isn't that beautiful? Here she is in the hospital. She had just come out of coma. It's a beautiful picture. And the amazing thing was she got discharged about a month before her expected date of going home. And I had lost track of the family. So as Pastor Dick Burnell mentioned, I have been at some other churches, including Cathedral of Faith. And I had been asked to do the morning service there at 8:30. And then a woman comes up to me after the service, and it's the grandmother of the little girl. And I had lost track of them. I didn't realize they were at Cathedral. So the grandmother got up on stage at the second service and testified. And she also gave me a few pictures to add to my collection. This is the dad and the little girl. This came from the grandmother. This is not my picture. And here is the little girl and the grandma. That's Cynthia. So it was really special. So I want to end with this really happy picture. And I think it's a really good way to end the service. And I do want to invite you all to come tonight because we are going to be doing a miracle evening with Harvest Evangelism, Transform Our World. And we'd love to see all of you come for prayer tonight. Whether you need prayer for a physical issue or mental or emotional, or you just want a blessing. I love to just bless people to see their lives be even more awesome in the Lord. So we'd love to have you come. And I just want to give a little blessing to all of you to close. So, Heavenly Father, Lord God, I just thank you, Lord, for all of the wonderful, wonderful church family from Jubilee, all of your precious children gathered here together. This is just so precious. And I know, Lord, that you love each and every one of us more than we can know, and that you want us to be raised up in you, blessed in every area of our lives, just receiving your tender, gentle love and your mercy and your goodness. I just pray for everyone here that whatever it is that you need from the Lord, that he will be giving that to you, and that you feel his love more strongly than you ever have. In Jesus' name, amen.